And it is now my great pleasure to be able to announce our first opening keynote, Mr. Matthias Kirchner. Pronounced it right? Yeah. Okay. More or less. Okay.
Kirchner, yeah.
He is the president of Free Software Foundation Europe, and he will talk about technology and how it's supposed to empower us and not restrict our lives. So please.
Thank you. So hello everybody, thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here and speaking here. Is the sound okay? Yes? Okay. So, here on my hands, I have more computing power than the whole world together when humans landed on the moon. So this is a very powerful machine. And today, it's not just in some ground control or some spaceships, it's everywhere around us. It's our mobile phone, it's on our desks, it's in our cars, it's in the elevator, in fridges. Some people even have it attached to their body. Is it better now with the acoustics? Shall I switch to the other mic? Okay, sorry. Okay, so that sounds better. So yeah, those computers, they are everywhere nowadays. They are even attached to some of our bodies, like we have hearing aids, or we have defibrillators directly attached to our heart. And often those computers, they run the same software, like free software, like the Linux kernel. And with those computers, we have very powerful tools. And even if today, if all of us here brainstorm together and we come up with the craziest ideas, what we could do, what problems we could solve, it will just be a small fraction of what will be possible in a few years. The question is, who will decide what we can do with these machines? Who will be able to, will someone be able to restrict us in what we can do? Will those computers empower us to control technology, or will other people use it to control us, what we can do with this technology? But let's go first go back some time. I myself got involved in free software because of a technical problem. So I had two computers at home. They were in different rooms, and I wanted to send an email from one of those computers to the other one, without using a dial-up connection to the internet, because it was quite expensive. So I want to send an email to my brother. And those computers, they had email programs installed. But it was somehow not possible to send one email to the other computer. And I complained at school. And a friend of mine, he gave me one of those CDs and some floppies and said, well, with this, you can manage it. It took some time. But some days later, I had my first GNU Linux installation, some white font on a black screen, and after long phone calls with this friend of mine. And weeks later, I also had a graphical user interface, and then I get involved more and more into free software. We joined with some friends, we set up a free software user group in our area, we went together to events, we gave talks, and helped other people to install GNU Linux on their computers. And after some time, I found out, well, it's not just that this software, you often get it without that much costs involved. We bought the CDs together and then copied them and made sure that everybody was able to install it. But I found out that free software always gives the people 4 freedoms, like this rights that everybody is allowed to use the software for any purpose, that we are allowed to study how it works and how all the things around us, how they are built, and that we are allowed to share it with others. So when I fix the problem, I'm able to convince, to help others in my school or friends or neighbors to also use the solution for the problem. And afterwards also that the software, we are able to improve it or to modify it and adapt it to our needs. So we don't have to change ourselves to what the software tells us what we should do, but we are able to change the software so it does what we want to do, or ask others to do this for us. And the more I read about it, the more interested I was in this whole idea about free software. And I found out that on CNU.org there are lots of articles which were about ethics and about social problems involved in free software. And also in the licenses, there's a lot of times it's about freedom. And that got me more and more interested in this. And I thought at that time, well, I understand the technical things, but the political things and the social things, that's something I really have problems to understand how this works in our society. And that's when I also then decided that I study politics and management to understand that, because, I mean, the documentation and other friends, they will help me to understand the technical aspects of this. And the more I got involved there, the more I was thinking about, like, the things they taught us in school and later at university, how state is structured, how government works. Will that still be true in 10 years from now on? Will the elected officials of us be in control of what they have in their power? Will it look like this in future? Or will it look more like this? That some people who control the technology will control what other people in our society can or cannot do. And that's also the time when at university we talked about the distribution of power and how democracies distribute power to different actors in our society. So no one is too powerful to overrule the rest. In a nutshell, I like to explain it often with rock, scissors, paper. This game, it would not be fun if rock always wins. And in a democracy, it's not about fun, but it's about our freedoms and our rights. It's crucial that power is distributed in our society. So yeah, I studied more and I was thinking about these issues at university. And at the time, we had to do an internship at university for 7 months. So I asked some friends at the local free software group, one of them was a Debian developer and still is, and asked him, like, where can I combine these two interests, like this political interest and my interest in free software? And he mentioned some organizations, like some government agencies in Germany, but also the Free Software Foundation Europe. So I looked on the websites for the government agencies. That was not a problem. Everything was written there, what you need to apply for an internship. I did that. But for FSFE, I didn't find anything. I just found that the address where they are registered looked very nice. It was this hotel here where there was the letterbox. And so I called them and asked them about an internship. But they said, yeah, they didn't have internships, I should write an email. After lots back and forth by email, I was able to convince them to try having interns. And so I was the first intern of FSFE. In the end, it didn't look like that, my working space. In the end, it was a sofa in a one-room apartment of Georg Rewe, the president at that time. So I was sitting here at the sofa. There was a desk over there where Georg was sitting and working, and there was his bed. And we were working together from there or traveling around. But it was the best time until then for my whole studies, and I learned a lot there. So first thing, FSFE was very much involved in the software patent debate at that time. And I was accompanying Georg and others at FSFE to meet with journalists to explain why software patents are bad for innovation in Europe. I participated in meetings with government officials. And in the end, I found out that when all people and lots of organizations are working together on an issue like that you can counter a huge lobby effort by big companies with big budgets. And in the end, a few years later, after the internship, the EU directive about software patents was stopped. So that was a huge improvement there. And a good lesson for what happens if people work together and everybody does his small piece to counter such a development. The other case what was at the moment ongoing was that Microsoft was charged guilty by the European Commission that they used their monopoly in the desktop market to also get a monopoly in the workgroup server market. And they gave them a fine. And Microsoft sued the European Commission in front of the European Court about that. And FSFE was a third party in that case. And while I was working there with Georg at the sofa, there were companies, Microsoft spent millions of euros to pay out other organizations and other people from this court case that they didn't continue to support the European Commission. Still, after 10 years, the court case was won by the European Commission, and from there on, free software companies were able to compete again in the workgroup server market against Microsoft. And that was something where, again, that was the fine which Microsoft had to pay for this, and they had to publish information, interoperability information, so people and free software companies can compete, but they spent much more to pay out other companies that they were not involved in this court case. Furthermore, during the internship already, FSFE started its sustaining membership program, the fellowship program. That's the logo there, and more people joined FSFE with that, with their by doing volunteer work and with small donations. And this logo, meanwhile, is kind of a free software mascot in Europe, so you often see that on T-shirts or laptops and so on, and sometimes even like scooters or some other artwork. And this was a very important lesson to see that there are so many people also willing to support such activities financially and with all their volunteer work. So it was very hard for me that the internship then was almost over, but Georg at the end said it would be good if someone would continue doing lobby work in Berlin, the German capital, as we didn't have anybody there. And I was thinking, well, those have been the most, the best 7 months, the most interesting 7 months of my life till now. So I decided to move to Berlin and continue my study there, and was the FSFE office with my letterbox and a small FSFE sign on the letterbox for 4 years until we had an office there. And yeah, so I started doing lobby work there, going to ministries, talking with people there about why free software is important for society, for economy. At the beginning, most of the reaction was like, what is he talking about? Long hair, beard, what a freak. But after some time, as also others talked with them, for the next person they thought, oh, another freak. I don't deal with IT. That's my IT department. But the more people talked with them and the more time went by, they got interested in, or not that interested at the beginning, but maybe they asked their assistant to investigate what all those freaks want from them. And after some time, more and more of them understood what we are talking about and got interested in it. So that was the start there. It took several years till we had more understanding in governments about free software, but when you compare the situation from 2004 to now, it's a huge improvement. In Berlin then we also started some activities with our groups. So you often don't need that many people here on this picture, there are many people. That's from an activity for Document Freedom Day. So we wanted to have a campaign to explain people why open standards matter for them, for their companies, but also for individuals or for governments. So we first thought that we should pick out the ones who are doing bad and who do not implement open standards. We found out there are too many. So let's pick those who are good examples and give them an award. And we came up with an award like this cake. People liked those cakes. I think some of them just did good stuff for open standards because they want to have this cake. And we gave that to, like here, radio stations who published their recordings under open standard formats, to television stations who did that, or to government bodies. And we always went there and explained them why this is important and why they should continue doing that, and motivated them to continue on their good path. For Document Freedom Day, we also sent some handcuffs to the Pope. That was from one activity where we asked everybody out there who needs education about open standards. And we will send them a letter explaining open standards and free software, and we will add some handcuffs to this letter to show how vendor login works. And the Pope was also selected. Also from him we didn't get any feedback to our letter, but the Vice President of the European Commission at that time, she also got some handcuffs of us, and she used them in a talk. And she did not just use them, but she also said that she's on our side and she supports open standards. Later, when I once met her, she explained me that afterwards she had huge problems with airport security and she was not allowed to take the handcuffs with her. But yeah, so that was a very nice activity. We were sending out letters to people explaining them why open standards and free software matters. Also, when you, I focused at the beginning on Germany because I was living in Berlin, but over the time, of course, I was also getting more and more involved on EU politics, because that's where a lot of the rules are made, which afterwards have to be implemented in the other capitals. And FSFE was also doing work in Brussels for a long time. And meanwhile, if you compare the situation like we had in 2004 and nowadays, there's a huge difference. Nowadays, the European Commission, they have open source strategy. They allow people in the government, in the organization to publish free software. They are using more and more free software. They meanwhile have a program, the Free and Open Source Software Auditing Project, to look what free software they are using and to improve the infrastructure they are using there. And so there's more and more things going on in Brussels, and more signals which show us that people there really want to do changes. Also, of course, I mean, the European Commission, it's a huge ship which is going in one direction, and if they say, well, we have to go in another direction, it takes a lot of time, And then there are some activities which also show what you as an individual can actually achieve. So does any one of you here remember or know the Open Moko? Yeah, so it was a phone which was open hardware, and you were able to run almost exclusively free software on these mobile phones. Really cool device. The problem was that my friends and partner at that time, they were not that satisfied with the voice quality. So it was good for lots of things, but making phone calls was not one of the strengths of this phone. So a friend of mine, Thorsten, he wanted to change it. He also had one of these Open Mokos, and he wanted to change it. And so he started to document how he's running an Android mobile phone with as little non-free software as possible. And he documented all of that on a wiki page. And after a few weeks, he got an email by Richard Stallman, and he said, oh, that's a nice campaign, but I suggest that you make the following changes to this page. And he looked at the changes and said, well, that all makes sense. Yes, I implement that and do that. But why is he talking about a campaign? I mean, that's just a wiki page. But after talking with some others, in the end we decided, well, why not make a campaign out of it? So there were more people interested in this. Some helped to translate parts of the website. They made leaflets out of it and translated those leaflets again, explained this to journalists and press. There was huge press coverage about this campaign, and we held workshops where we helped people to root their mobile phones and install free software on them. So in the end, it was really successful because so many people joined this activity. And it's still something which you can do, like in your conference bags, there's also the leaflet about F-Droid, which is a free software repository where you can install free software on your Android devices. But it was something which was started by one person writing a wiki page, and then finding some others who also cared about free software on mobile phones. And that was the effect. Lots of newspapers wrote about it. Many people now use this software on their mobile phones, and there's much more awareness about that. Another activity which highlights this aspect is our PDF readers campaign. So think about you're driving at a highway, and there is this sign on the road. To drive on this road, you need a Toyota. You can do a greatest test drive at your local Toyota dealer, signed by your government. I think a lot of European car manufacturers wouldn't have liked such commercials by the government at our highways. But when it comes to websites, that was the case what a lot of government websites did at that time. And now they still do. They told people that you need a proprietary PDF reader to watch, to display their PDFs. And they gave a link to where they can download that. And we thought that's something we want to change. And there were, again, some volunteers who said, well, that's something we want to work on. So the first thing they did was they gathered all the free software alternatives, all the free software PDF readers on one page. Lots of people translated that. I think it was over 16 translations for that website. And then we asked people, what government websites are out there who do this? And please give us the snail mail address of those organizations. So we gathered over 2,000 of these addresses of governments and public administrations who are doing this advertisement. And we wrote them letters. We sent out over 2,000 letters to them, explaining them why this is bad, why this is against competition, and why they shouldn't do that, and about free software and open standards in general. Yeah, the effect was that our letterbox in the FSFE office got a purpose. So instead of just advertisement and our email boxes being full, we now had a full letterbox after some time. We got replies by mayors in some cities in Spain, in Italy, and all over Europe, thanking us for this note and saying, well, they will remove this advertisement, or they will add another note about free software PDF readers. We got letters by the offices of the Prime Minister in France and Belgium, and there were even like one letter was from the German criminal police. They said, your argumentation makes sense, which, well, they should know. And there was just two negative feedback. One was a German hospital. They said they will sue us. I don't know why, and it never happened. And Adobe wasn't amused by this. They also wrote us why we didn't tell them before. In the end, what we achieved is, after 7 years, we achieved that over 50% of those websites which were reported to us changed this. And so that's a very good result. It's even nowadays, it's an activity which is a very good first activity to contact public administrations. You can tell them something which is very easy to implement and explain them free software as a first step. So I can really recommend that. And just to show you one example, it's in German, but I will read it to you. It's from the city of Hamburg. And they write, please choose a free PDF reader. There are many programs to read and write PDFs. The following list of PDF readers is vendor neutral. All those programs are free software, which grant you the 4 freedoms to use, study, share, and improve. This gives you control over your computer and helps you to protect your privacy. That was written there. And it was for many years on this URL on the top, hamburg.de/adobe. It's not there anymore, but it was one of the nicest examples there. Another activity which FSFE was now doing for several years is the I Love Free Software Day. So the idea is that in the free software community, we are often very critical. We write bug reports, we tell people what they are doing wrong, what they should do better. The tone on some mailing lists is sometimes quite harsh, very critical, and we often forget to say thank you. And so we thought that, well, we should have one occasion that people say thank you to each other and motivate each other to continue with all this. And we choose February the 14th because not just the flower industry should benefit from this day, but also the free software community. So on this day, we ask you to thank some others who are developing free software, who are documenting free software, who are promoting free software. Tell them that you like what they are doing. They are on the website ilovefs.org, there are several suggestions. So as an individual or with your organization, join this activity, already mark it in your calendar to get some positive feedback in the free software community. Until then, there are also some things where you can easily participate to promote software freedom more. That's FSFE is meanwhile sending out 2 packages a day with promotion material, like the leaflets you also saw in your conference bag about free software on mobile phones or email encryptions or some other stickers. And the beginning of the year, at one day we had orders for this almost every minute, and we're already thinking that there's a spam bot on our website, but then I found out that there's a Reddit article which was, at the top there was something about a sticker which was similar to one of ours, and it said best sticker ever, and then down in the comments someone linked to our sticker on the right side there and said that he ordered it from us. And so in 48 hours we got more orders than we usually got in 6 months for those. And yeah, it's something which afterwards now the orders doubled, and there are so many people out there who now use this promotion material, not just this sticker, to raise awareness for free software. So they use that to distribute it at libraries, cafes, their hackerspace, or here like at street festivals to hand out leaflets to people to explain them why does free software matter? Why do we need this? What effects does it have on society? So those are all small activities where you still can participate, and all of that was just possible not because of a few people, but because of many, many people working together. So many dedicated volunteers working together, one doing website work, others doing translations, others doing proofreading, others being on the street talking with the people. So many, many different people who make this all the activities possible I just mentioned. And of course also sustaining members and donors who support organizations, free software organizations throughout Europe, that they also have some money to pay for leaflets, to pay for staff, for travel, and so on. As an outlook, I want to give you two examples of upcoming activities by FSFE. One is that during the next years, we want to make sure that everybody of you has the right to modify your own hardware and software in all those devices. So we saw that products which before you were always able to use a screwdriver, open it, repair it, experiment with it, modify it, it's now often prevented with the software on those devices. And we want to make sure that it's always your right to modify the hardware and software, so you can experiment with products, you can learn how those computers and those machines around them work, you can build your own products and sell them, and just experiment and think about new ways and creative ways to solve problems of our world. One of the concrete examples in this is, at the moment, there is the radio lockdown directive at the European level, and member states soon have to implement that, and we want to make sure that it will not prevent all of us to install free software on Wi-Fi routers or laptops, mobile phones with Wi-Fi access. That's something which is at the moment in danger, and it's something we are working on, and if there are people here who would like to help to raise awareness about that in Croatia, please contact me afterwards. That's a really important topic at the moment. Furthermore, we would love to see a world in which public administrations publish the software which was financed with public money. We want to make sure that that people can reuse software which was already financed with public money, that public administrations can use other work which was already paid by the public, and that throughout Europe people exchange all this knowledge, or sometimes even worldwide. And that's something where just 2 weeks ago we had a workshop about how to campaign for that, and I hope that in the coming months and years we'll be able to make a difference there. So also for that, if you're interested in that, please contact us. That's a quote which one of my first teachers wrote down for me, and I think it's a very important one, because it's not about a few people doing lots of work for software freedom. It's a lot of people doing some work, sometimes just a few minutes a week, an hour a month for software freedom. And it doesn't matter how few you do, how little you do. It's the sum of all of that. It's the sum of all the work all of us do. So it's the organization of this conference, which is a huge effort. It's writing a bug report, writing free software, documenting free software, translating or proofreading leaflet texts or documentation. It's distributing leaflets at your cafes or libraries. There are so many different things you can do, and in a sum, it will help to change the world towards more software freedom. And it's important, because nowadays there are still many people around the world who do not benefit from fundamental freedoms like freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom of speech, privacy, or other fundamental freedoms. They have to fight for them every day. And once you get them as a society, it doesn't stop there. You have to defend them every day. You have to make sure that you defend your freedoms every day. And as we live in a world in where computers are more and more around us and control what people in our society can do, we also have to fight for and constantly defend software freedom, which is the right for us to empower, which is for us to empower us to control technology. So thank you. Voila, I'm looking forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
So you mentioned that you had this workshop for convincing governments that the publicly funded software should be published as a free software. Is there perhaps a recording of that, or will you be holding more and making more info available somewhere on the web?
So the workshop, it was not recorded. We got some people who are well known in Germany for doing media, for doing campaigns which the media picks up and which are sometimes often very controversial. And they gave us some examples of how you can campaign, what you have to keep in mind. I think we will try to document as much as possible of that and make it available for others. And we will also summarize some things there for others that they can participate in that, because our goal is this campaign, it should not be a central thing and then it's over. We want to do some activities which get media attention, which helps others in Europe or others worldwide to campaign for the same ideas. And I can, if you see anything about it and if you have any questions, just contact us and we will try to help you as much as possible to also get the experience we got at the workshop to do the same work in Croatia or other countries.
Any more questions? I have one. Do you have any comments that the European Commission didn't include open source, open standards in new IT programs and papers recently we read about? Do you have any comments about that information?
Yeah, on our website we have one of the latest news items is about this. So It's a bit more complicated than that. So the European Commission was for a long time slightly promoting more and more free software and open standards. Of course, sometimes when you think, well, it's going good, there is again a development which pushes you back, and then you have to start at step 2 again to continue with your work. And at the moment, they published a document where they were talking about open standards and free software and what they want to achieve there. And there were also some talks like from Commissioner Oettinger about why free software is important. But in one of the documents, they also mentioned friend licensing. That's for standards. It's called fair, reasonable, and non-discriminative terms. The problem is that this hinders to implement it with free software. And at the moment, we made this comment, and we are now talking with them to understand, like, well, you say you want to have more free software, more open standards. On the other hand, you write about this friend licensing. That's something which contradicts each other. So you have to fix that. And that's something which we are doing at the moment, and which is always, it's a bit more complicated with this friend licensing, why exactly it doesn't work. But if you are interested in this topic, please read it on our website, and also inform people like in the Croatian government about this. It's always crucial that they understand that with lots of things which you can write into this friend terms, you can prevent free software. Also, they sound very fair and reasonable at the first sight, but they don't work with free software.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, thank you very much for the talk.
One more thing to ask you. In the conference bags, you saw that there are leaflets in there, and they are in English. But if you or anyone here can help us to translate them in Croatian, we will make sure that next year at this conference you will have them in Croatian. So please help us with that. Thank you.
Thank you.